Many writers often feel lost on where to begin when it comes to outlining. They often believe that the outlining process just happens to be writing out the what of the story. What happens? What are the characters doing? What do the enemies want? But the greatest question, extending beyond the pen and the page, is not what, but why. Here are some outlining tips that I've learned on my journey as a writer after talking to so many authors and so many writers across the board, from the video game industry and narrative design and game writing, all the way to published traditional authors, hybrid authors, and indie authors. And not only will these tips help you figure out the why of your story, but it will also help you maximize the impact of your story without wasting time on meaningless scenes. Tip number 1, create not one, but 2 outlines. I think a lot of us are familiar with the idea of an outline where we just kind of write out what happens in a story. Sometimes people write that out in bullet points. Some people write that out in paragraph synopses. Synopses? Synopsises? Synops. You know what I'm trying to say. But I think in my journey and in my experience discussing this with a lot of authors, that there is a much more effective way to be writing your outline. So I want you to think of this in 2 parts. An outline is more than just what happens in the story. It needs to be the lighthouse, the beacon that calls you home and keeps you true and grounded to the core and the heart of your story. So instead of creating your first outline as a bullet point or list of things that happen in the story, I want you to try and create this separate outline that I call the premise outline. This premise outline contains 6 elements. The first one being the premise. Now, the premise is the core idea and heart of your story. This should occur before any of your chapter outlines. So before you touch any of the chapters or try and section anything off into acts, at the very top of your page, you should put the premise. This premise will serve as the anchor for your writing and the soul of your story. So whenever you get to writing, and no matter how deep you get into writing, you can always go back to the top and see exactly what your story is supposed to be about. The second element that you're going to put right beneath the premise is your list of themes and motifs. What are themes and what are motifs? Themes are often confused for motifs. Sometimes when we hear the word theme, we think, well, this movie has themes of love and lost connection or found family. Those are not themes. Those are motifs. Motifs are recurring ideas that pop up in a story that really help ground and emphasize the theme. Why do you want a list of themes and motifs? Well, here's the fun part that I want you to try in this exercise. I want you to take a couple of colored pens or highlighters, whichever one you prefer, and when you write out those themes and motifs, I want you to color code each one. For example, if your theme is teamwork is necessary for success, as cheesy as that sounds, I want you to highlight that theme in yellow. Maybe one of your motifs is found family. I want you to highlight that in a completely different color. Or if one of your motifs is collectivism versus individualism, maybe highlight that concept in like a completely different color. And then I want you to take that through your entire outline and be able to highlight which sections you're touching on these different story beats, themes, and motifs. So when you take a step back and you can look at the greater picture, you can see what themes you're maybe overemphasizing or what themes you're not emphasizing enough and you're neglecting. That way you get to know on the grander scale of things where you should be putting more of your attention. What parts should you be editing? What parts should you be spending more time on or maybe pulling back on? And that way you'll have a greater picture on how balanced your book is on all of these story beats and if you're accurately hitting them enough for the readers to understand them. So we've covered the premise and we've covered themes and motifs, and those 2 items are going to sit at the very top of your outline here. And again, this is the premise outline. The third element that I want you to focus on is the purpose. Now we're diving into the chapter section. So when you separate your chapters and go chapter 1, chapter 2, within each chapter, you should have these elements. You should have the purpose, the conflict, the climax, and a one-sentence synopsis. And I'm gonna break down those things for you here. So first and foremost, and in my opinion, the most important, you need your purpose. You need to explain why this chapter even exists. There are a lot of times writers will get into the weeds of their world and really want to dive into things, like whether it be conversations between characters or intimate moments or trying to explain the world building. But a lot of those things don't drive the story forward. Every chapter, even the smallest word or line of dialogue, should serve a purpose. So if you just have a scene of two characters arguing over something meaningless, that's not something you probably want to keep in your script. Ask yourself when you look at a scene, what does this serve? And if it's not serving enough and it's not serving anything, maybe don't include that in your story. Every chapter should carry some level of momentum that grows and grows until it reaches the end of your story. This doesn't mean that your story can't have slow, intimate moments. Those moments are still moving something forward, whether it be the relationship between the characters, or it be revealing something new about a character that the readers are not familiar with. Those moments may be slow-paced, but they still move the plot forward. Or your scene could be super action-packed. That's still moving the plot forward, but you don't want a useless fight scene. So make sure that everything that you put in there is contributing towards the greater goal. And that's the whole point of the purpose. You want to look at a scene and say, I have this in here because it provides characterization, it fleshes out my character, it highlights this part about her personality, it's revealing the enemy's motivations, or we're giving more detail to world building and what this world looks like and how it functions in relation to our character, or we're revealing another part of the mystery that's going on. The purpose of your chapter should look something like that. Moving on, conflict. Now, this doesn't mean that every chapter has to have something crazy happening or somebody fighting or bickering or arguing, but there needs to be some level of tension that exists. Whether that be tension between the characters, tension in a moment, romantic tension, or just people having disagreements on their views or the ways that they behave, or tension between the character and the world that she's in. These can be internal or external conflicts. Maybe there's a chapter where a character is just really in her head about something. What does that look like? And how is it driving the plot forward? Conflict and tension create interest in the story, and it allows the readers to be engaged in something. There are stakes here. Next is the climax, which relates very heavily to the conflict. When you are building tension, that needs to be released in some way. The climax is the most intense moment of this chapter. It doesn't mean everything crazy has to happen. This ongoing tension between two people finally results in an argument or a blow up. Maybe all of this built-in tension has changed some characters' minds about something. This doesn't have to be a huge crazy thing that happens, but it has to give us payoff for that tension that you built up during the conflict. The climax should mark some type of change or progress in the character's journey. What decision, what realization, what complication are the characters and the readers experiencing in this chapter? And finally, at the very end of your chapter outline, you should have a one-sentence synopsis. What a one-sentence synopsis is exactly as it sounds. Instead of writing a bullet point list of what happens, try really hard to take that entire chapter and wrap it up in a one, maybe two sentence synopsis on what happens. This forces you as the writer to take your most important story beats and compress it into a sentence that encompasses what happens in this chapter. So you have an understanding beyond just the concept of the chapter, but what's happening, but not getting too lost in it that now your chapter outline looks like its own novel. The whole point of this exercise is to force you to be concise and keep you on track. That should be your premise outline. You're gonna take that, you're gonna go through all of your chapters, and then you're gonna move that to one side of your screen. On the other side of your screen, you're gonna open a document Now, this is the outline we're all familiar with, but we're gonna make it efficient. Instead of writing down like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of how this story is going to go, you're going to take each chapter and the events of that chapter and put them in bullet point form. The reason for this is because if you are writing in a paragraph format, you can easily get lost in your own details, and that's not what you want to do. You want to make sure that you get all the story beats and all the events that you're trying to hit in a clear, concise, and very visual way, so you know what happens in what order and you're not missing anything in the weeds. You're gonna use that premise outline like a North Star for that second outline. So whenever you start writing and getting carried away with the story, look back to that premise outline and say, what is the purpose of this chapter again? What am I supposed to be accomplishing here? Then when you look at your other outline, ask yourself, am I accomplishing it? Now, the second outline doesn't have to be so strict. For me personally, sometimes I like to throw little dialogue tidbits in there so I don't forget them. If you don't want to make that outline messy, I use Google Docs, and I just throw a comment in there on the side saying, I like this, but I want to change it here. I always add my thoughts just to make sure when I go back to it later, I have that all written out in my head and I can figure it out from there. Now that you have your premise outline and your synopsis outline, you have two amazing foundational pillars to start writing your story, and not just writing it in a way of telling us what happens, but why. And you'll be able to clearly map out your path throughout this novel. An outline is so much more than just retelling your brainchild on paper. It's not even a map to help charter you through the ocean of the world that you've created. It's actually a lighthouse to keep you grounded and call you back home to the core and the soul of your story. And every time you feel like you've strayed a little far from shore, look to that lighthouse and it will keep you on track. Now, everyone has differing opinions, especially pantsers, when it comes to outlines. And if you haven't guessed already, I'm very much a plotter. But I feel like if you're on your writing journey, it does help to have this type of outline for you. It doesn't take away from the mystery of writing it, because you're not writing the entire outline in extreme detail. You're only covering some basic points and story beats that you want to hit, along with the themes and motifs that you're also trying to accomplish in the same vein. There's still a lot of discovery writing to be had, and I hope that you guys found value in my premise outline and synopsis outline breakdown. Those who are more interested in just reading a much shorter version of this video, I do have a blog that I've posted along with the samples that I've put in the description below for you. If you like this writing advice and you like the videos, or you just want to hang out, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe on my video. I will be posting vlogs for my writing journey for a novel that I am trying to finish before August. Stay tuned. I have a lot of great ideas coming forward for videos just like this. So again, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit that bell to get notifications, and I will see you guys in the next one. Happy writing! Bye!